You carry something most people can't handle. These words, often attributed to Carl Jung, hold a quiet but powerful truth. Have you ever felt out of place? Not because there's something wrong with you, but because there's something different about you, something rare. You walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts. People seem nervous, intrigued, or even defensive, and you can't quite explain why. You may not be doing anything unusual, yet your presence feels intense. Your energy feels heavy to others, not in a negative way, but in a deep way. If this resonates with you, it's not just your imagination. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, explored the unseen forces of the human psyche. He believed that each of us carries a unique psychological fingerprint, shaped by our unconscious, our shadow, our soul, and some of us are simply more in tune with those forces. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating every part of ourselves, even the dark and hidden ones. It's not an easy path, but those who walk it radiate a kind of energy that's unmistakable and often misunderstood. This video is for those who carry that kind of energy, the rare ones, the deep ones, the old souls, the ones who disturb others not because they try to, but because their very existence challenges the illusion of comfort, denial, and superficiality. You see, most people operate from the surface. They avoid the shadow. They run from pain. But you've faced it, or at least you've started to. And that inner work, it shows. Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. If you've even begun that journey, you are already different from most. You carry something powerful, something real, something that can't be faked. And the truth is, people feel it. They may not have the words to describe it, but they sense it in their gut. Sometimes they're drawn to you. Other times, they pull away. But it's not about you being too much. It's about them not being ready. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore 13 signs that your energy is on another level, and why that disturbs people. These signs aren't about arrogance or superiority. They're about awareness. They're about the subtle ways you stand out, and how Carl Jung's teachings help explain why. So if you've ever felt like your presence is too intense, too honest, too real, this is for you. Because maybe, just maybe, it's not that you're too much, it's that most people haven't met someone like you yet. Let's begin. You walk into a room, and something shifts. No words have been spoken, no grand gestures made, but eyes glance your way. Conversations pause, and people seem slightly on edge. You're not trying to dominate. In fact, you might even feel introverted or quiet, and yet, your presence carries a certain weight. This is one of the clearest signs that your energy is on another level. Carl Jung understood this phenomenon through the concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who we truly are. Most people never embark on this path. They wear masks. They stay in the roles society gives them. But you, even just by being yourself, become a mirror to their inauthenticity. That's why your presence can feel intimidating. You radiate something many have buried, truth. And truth, when uninvited, is often uncomfortable. Your energy might bring up questions others don't want to face. Am I being real with myself? Why does this person make me feel exposed? What are they seeing that I'm hiding, even from myself? But it's not personal, it's psychological. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress or deny. When people meet someone who's begun integrating their own shadow, it can unconsciously activate their own unresolved parts. You don't have to say a word. Your inner work speaks for you. And that's the paradox. Your power doesn't come from being loud or forceful. It comes from depth, from having faced your pain, from carrying your wounds with dignity, from living with alignment. So if you've noticed people act differently around you, maybe quieter, more careful, or even defensive, it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because your energy carries truth. And not everyone is ready to meet that kind of honesty, even when it stands quietly in front of them. Sign number 2, you seek depth over small talk. Let's be honest, small talk drains you. While others are content discussing the weather, gossip, or surface-level trends, you find yourself craving something more. More meaning, more truth, more connection. You're not interested in filling silence with noise. You're drawn to what lies beneath the silence, to the inner worlds that most people never dare to share. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." But you're not like most people. You want to understand why someone feels lost. You want to explore dreams, fears, purpose, the raw material of the human experience, and that alone sets your energy apart. In a world addicted to distraction, depth can feel dangerous. When you bring your full presence to a conversation, it creates an invisible invitation or challenge for others to show up too. Some rise to meet it, others retreat, unsure how to engage beyond the script they've been handed. This can make social situations awkward. You may feel like you don't fit in. You might even be told you're too intense, too serious, or too much. But intensity isn't a flaw, it's clarity. And seriousness, when rooted in awareness, is just passion with purpose. Jung believed that a meaningful life is only possible when we confront the unconscious. And that includes meaningful conversations. You're not content staying in the shallow end. You want to dive into the depths of what makes us human. And while not everyone will go there with you, those who do, never forget it. So if you often find yourself bored by small talk and hungry for real soul-level connection, know this. It's not a weakness. It's a reflection of your evolved energy. Depth is your language, and depth disturbs those who are afraid of what they might find in their own. Sign number 3. You trigger unresolved shadows. You've probably experienced this before. Someone suddenly becomes cold, defensive, or even hostile toward you, and you have no idea why. You didn't say anything offensive, you didn't do anything wrong, but their energy changes the moment you walk in. Here's the truth. You're not the problem, you're the mirror. Carl Jung famously introduced the concept of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that contains everything we reject, deny, or are ashamed of. And when people haven't confronted their own shadows, they project them onto others. Your depth, your presence, your self-awareness. It can awaken parts of others. They've spent their whole lives trying to suppress. They might not realize it consciously, but on some level they sense that you see them, not just who they pretend to be, but who they really are. And that kind of seeing, it's unsettling for the unprepared. That's why your energy can trigger discomfort. You shine a light on what's hidden. You radiate clarity, and clarity makes it hard to keep wearing masks. Jung explained that what irritates us about others can often lead to a deeper understanding of ourselves. But not everyone wants that understanding. So instead of doing the inner work, they blame the one who triggered the wound, you. You're not here to provoke pain, but your very existence, your authenticity, your groundedness, forces reflection, And for those not ready to reflect, that feels like a threat. So when someone pulls away, lashes out, or grows distant without reason, remember, your light touched their shadow, and not everyone is ready to meet themselves in the dark. It's not personal, it's psychological. Sign number 4, you're not easily manipulated. There's something about you that unsettles manipulators, not because you challenge them directly, but because you see through them without even trying. Carl Jung believed in the power of intuition, a deep inner knowing that bypasses logic, and you have it. You pick up on subtle energy shifts. You notice what isn't being said. You sense when something just doesn't feel right, and that makes you dangerous. To those who rely on confusion, guilt, or control to get their way. You're not reactive, you're grounded, and that stillness gives you the upper hand. People with manipulative tendencies thrive on uncertainty. They test boundaries, they exploit emotional blind spots. But when they meet someone who knows their own value, someone who has done the inner work, their tactics fall flat. You don't fall for guilt trips. You don't bend under pressure. You don't need approval badly enough to sacrifice your integrity. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." You've made parts of your unconscious conscious, and that awareness makes you hard to fool. Manipulators often retreat when they encounter your energy. They may label you as too cold, too intense, or too independent. But what they really mean is, I can't control you. Your clarity is your shield, your discernment is your strength, and your unwillingness to play emotional games. That's rare and deeply disturbing to those who rely on them. So if people try to gaslight you, twist your words, or pressure you into things, and you simply don't budge, know this. You're not being difficult, you're being aware, and awareness is something manipulation can't survive. Sign number 5, you're deeply self-aware. You don't just move through life on autopilot. You observe your thoughts, you question your reactions, you reflect on your past. Not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. This is self-awareness. One of the clearest signs your energy operates on a higher frequency. While many people fear looking inward, you're drawn to it. You want to know what drives you, what wounds shaped you, what patterns you keep repeating, and why. Carl Jung considered self-awareness to be the very beginning of psychological growth. He believed that until we turn our gaze inward, we remain prisoners of our conditioning, repeating the same cycles, making the same choices, and blaming the outside world for our pain. But you've broken that cycle, or at least, you've started to. You notice when you're being reactive, you pause before you speak. You own your mistakes instead of hiding behind ego. And this kind of self-awareness makes people uncomfortable, especially those who aren't ready to take that level of responsibility for themselves. Because when you take accountability, you hold up a mirror, not through judgment, but through contrast. You become proof that it's possible to grow, possible to reflect, possible to evolve. But evolution isn't easy up, and not everyone is ready for it. That's why people might find your presence unnerving, not because you're better, but because you're aware. Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." You've chosen to awaken, and that changes everything. Your energy carries the quiet confidence of someone who has met their own darkness and didn't run from it. So if people act differently around you, if they hesitate, withdraw, or seem unsure, It might be because they sense something rare. You know yourself, and in a world full of masks, that kind of authenticity is revolutionary. Sign number 6. You attract deep confessions from strangers. Has this ever happened to you? A stranger, maybe someone you just met, suddenly opens up to you. They start telling you their life story, their trauma, their fears, their secrets, and you're left thinking, why are they telling me all of this? This isn't a coincidence. It's energetic. Carl Jung believed in the collective unconscious, the shared psychic structure that connects all human beings. He also believed that when someone carries integrated energy that's grounded, self-aware, and non-judgmental, others feel safe opening up to them. That's you. You're not shocked by pain. You don't flinch at vulnerability. You hold space without even realizing it. And people feel that. Most people are starving for real connection. They carry emotional weight that they can't share with friends, family, or co-workers. But when they sense your presence, your calm, your quiet depth, something in them relaxes, walls come down. It's not about you being a therapist. It's about your energy giving unconscious permission. It's okay to be real here. Jung would say, this is your inner self radiating outward, not the ego, not the persona, but the true self, the part of you that has embraced both light and shadow. And when people feel that, they instinctively trust it. But with this gift comes a challenge. People may dump their emotional baggage on you without realizing the impact. You may walk away feeling heavy, confused, or emotionally drained, even if the conversation seemed brief. This is why boundaries are essential. You can hold space without losing yourself in someone else's story. So if strangers often confess things to you, things they say they've never told anyone, it's not random. It's a reflection of your elevated energy. You've become a safe space in a world full of masks, and sometimes that safety speaks louder than words. Sign number 7. You value solitude. Over validation, while others chase attention. You seek peace. While the world scrolls, posts, and performs, you often retreat. Not out of fear, but out of choice. You find comfort in solitude, not because you're antisocial, but because your energy regenerates in stillness. Carl Jung understood the power of solitude. He believed that true self-discovery doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens in the quiet, in the silence between distractions, in the moments when we're finally alone with our own thoughts. For you, solitude isn't loneliness. It's alignment. It's where clarity comes. It's where your inner compass sharpens. And this, too, sets your energy apart. Most people are terrified of being alone. They seek constant validation, approval, likes, applause, external confirmation that they're enough. But you've learned to validate yourself. That scares people, because when someone no longer needs the crowd to feel worthy, they become unpredictable, uncontrollable. You're not driven by trends, you're driven by truth, and that independence makes others uncomfortable, especially those who rely on external approval to feel whole. Jung said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. And that's exactly why you sometimes choose solitude, because surface-level interaction doesn't nourish you. Real connection or no connection. This kind of self-contained energy is rare. It's powerful, and it disturbs people who mistake constant noise for confidence. So if you've ever been told you're too distant, too private, or too quiet, remember, they're noticing your strength, not your absence. You're not missing from the world. You're just not chasing it. And in a society addicted to attention, your ability to be still is a radical act of self-possession. Sign number 8. You're misunderstood, often, even without saying much. You say very little, and yet people assume so much. You've likely noticed it. You walk into a space, keep to yourself, observe, and still, people form strong opinions about you. They might say you're cold, arrogant, or aloof, even if you've barely spoken. Why? Because your energy speaks louder than your words. Carl Jung believed that human perception is deeply shaped by the unconscious, meaning people don't just react to what you say, they react to what you carry. And when you carry depth, presence, and self-possession, it disrupts the unspoken rules of how people expect others to behave. You don't overshare to feel accepted. You don't shrink to make others feel comfortable. You simply exist, fully and unapologetically, and that alone can make people project their own insecurities onto you. They might assume you're judging them, or that you think you're better than them, or that you're hiding something, simply because you're not performing for approval. But in reality, you're just being you. Jung would say this is a classic projection. When someone sees their own unresolved feelings reflected in another person and mistakes it for truth. You may have been misunderstood your whole life, not because you're unclear, but because you're complex, and complexity often gets reduced by those who need simplicity to feel safe. So if people misread your silence, if they label your presence without understanding it, if they react strongly to things you never said, know this: it's not a flaw in your communication. It's a reflection of their filters. You are not responsible for how others choose to interpret your energy. You're only responsible for staying aligned with your truth. And often, the ones who misunderstand you most are the ones who've never taken the time to understand themselves. Sign number 9. You hold space for truth. Even when it's uncomfortable, you don't look away from hard truths, not yours, not others. In a world that avoids discomfort at all costs, you stand out, because you're willing to face what others hide. You don't sugarcoat. You don't play along just to keep the peace. And while you may not always speak it aloud, your very presence holds space for what's real. Carl Jung taught that transformation only begins when we confront the truth, especially the parts that scare us. He called this the process of shadow integration, the act of facing our darkest fears, wounds, and impulses, and learning to live with them, not run from them. Most people avoid this. They bury the truth to protect the image. But you invite it forward. Whether in a conversation, a conflict, or a moment of silence, you don't flinch when the real stuff shows up. You meet it with clarity. You hold it with compassion, and that changes the dynamic entirely. Others might feel exposed around you, not because you attack, but because your groundedness shines light on what they've been avoiding. You become a catalyst, a mirror, a threshold. Sometimes this makes people uncomfortable. Sometimes it pushes them away. But more often than not, it plants a seed of truth, a seed of awakening. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You live that truth, not just in theory, but in action. You don't run from the uncomfortable. You lean in, and that's one of the clearest signs your energy is on a higher level. You are not here to maintain illusions. You are here to make room for what is real, even when it's raw. And that, more than anything, makes you unforgettable. Sign number 10. you've been through the fire, and you didn't burn. You didn't get this energy from reading books. You earned it. The hard way, through loss, through heartbreak, through nights when everything you believed in collapsed, and somehow you're still here, not just surviving, but awake, stronger, wiser, softer in the right places, sharper in others. Carl Jung believed that true individuation, the process of becoming whole, only begins after a descent, a confrontation with the unconscious, a collapse of the persona, a dark night of the soul, and you've walked that path. Maybe quietly, maybe alone, but every scar has become a symbol of transformation. You no longer fear the fire, because you are the fire. Not the kind that destroys, but the kind that purifies. You've burned away illusion. You've let old identities die. You've stared into the void and found something deeper waiting on the other side. You. That's what gives your energy its weight. It's not intensity for show. It's presence forged through pain. People feel it, even if they don't understand it. They sense the gravity in your gaze, the calm in your chaos, the depth in your silence. You've become a living symbol of what's possible after the breakdown, and that's what makes your energy unsettling to some, and magnetic to others. You've walked where many are still afraid to go, and now, whether you realize it or not, you carry the map. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And you've paid the price. In suffering, in solitude, in surrender. But in return, you've claimed something rare. A self that no one can take from you. So if you feel different, it's because you are. If others can't define you, it's because you've outgrown the boxes they're still trapped in. You've been through the fire, and you didn't burn. You became. Sign number 11, your presence, disrupts the status quo. You don't even have to speak. Your presence alone shifts the energy in a room. People pause, they notice. Some feel inspired, others feel threatened. Why? Because you don't conform. You don't follow the unspoken rules of fitting in, staying quiet, playing small. You carry yourself with an invisible authority, one that doesn't need permission. Carl Jung would say you're embodying the archetype of the individuated self, someone who has stepped outside of cultural programming and become whole within. And when someone truly becomes themselves, without compromise, it sends shockwaves through systems built on sameness. You disrupt without trying, because your energy represents a different way of being, one that isn't built on fear, validation, or hierarchy. In workspaces, your refusal to play politics can create tension. In families, your clarity can shake up generational silence. In relationships, your self-respect can challenge unhealthy dynamics. You're not trying to rebel. You're just not pretending anymore. And when you stop pretending, you unconsciously invite others to do the same. That invitation, it's powerful. But not everyone is ready for it. Some will resist, some will push back, some will label you difficult, intense, or different, because they can't figure out how to control you. But Jung taught that real transformation isn't comfortable. It's disruptive. It shakes the old world apart, so the real self can emerge. And that's what your energy does. It shakes things, not because you want attention, but because your truth doesn't fit inside the lies people still cling to. So if people act differently around you, if your silence feels loud, if your choices make others uncomfortable, it's not because you're wrong, it's because you're real, and realness, in a world that thrives on illusion, is the most radical energy of all. Sign number 12, you navigate life with inner guidance. Not external noise, there's a quiet knowing inside you. A compass that doesn't always make sense to others, but has rarely led you astray. While most people obsess over opinions, approval, and the right way to live, you move differently, not recklessly, but intuitively. You listen before you act. You feel your way forward, and more often than not, your inner voice speaks louder than the world around you. Carl Jung believed that the self, the true, whole self, speaks through symbols, dreams, emotions, and intuitions, and the more integrated you become, the clearer that inner guidance becomes. For you, logic matters. But it's not everything, because you've learned. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind can't explain. Sometimes the gut senses what the eyes can't see. And that makes you hard to manipulate, hard to program, hard to predict. You might not always have a plan, but you know when to move. You might not always explain your choices, but you feel when something is aligned or not. People may call you too sensitive or too out there, but what they don't realize is you're connected to something most of them have lost, yourself. You don't follow the herd. You don't need the crowd to validate your path, because you've built a relationship with your own soul. That's rare, that's powerful, and yes, that can be deeply unsettling to those who've never learned to trust their own inner voice. But you're not here to follow a script. You're here to follow your truth. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And part of that becoming is learning to trust your own rhythm, your own flow, your own fire. So if your choices confuse people, if your silence speaks volumes, if your life doesn't look like theirs, that's okay. You weren't made to follow. You were made to remember. Sign number 13. You see patterns others can't. You notice things, subtle things, the shift in someone's tone, the tension behind their smile, the way the same events seem to repeat, like life's trying to send a message. Where others see chaos, you see patterns. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reflect the deeper order behind life. He believed that those tuned in to their unconscious could perceive these patterns and use them as guidance. That's what you do, often without realizing it. You read between the lines. You connect dots that others don't even see, and sometimes it feels like you're watching a movie you've seen before, because the themes keep repeating. It could be in relationships, or family dynamics, or the choices people make when they're afraid. You sense how energy loops, how pain hides, how trauma echoes, and when you try to explain what you see, people may stare back, confused, or even defensive, because seeing patterns means seeing truth, and not everyone is ready for that. Some will call you over-analytical. Others might say you're reading too much into things. But the truth is, you're seeing exactly what's there, just below the surface. Jung would say you've developed a relationship with your unconscious mind, the part of you that notices what logic misses. This gives you a kind of vision, not the fantasy kind, but the kind rooted in reality. You see where choices lead. You sense when someone's words don't match their energy. You predict outcomes, not because you're psychic, but because you observe. That awareness is a gift, and sometimes it feels like a burden, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you speak it, you might find yourself standing alone. But clarity always comes at a cost, and if you've been given the ability to see deeper, it's because you're meant to move differently. Thank you for watching. If this message stirred something in you, you're not alone. Subscribe for more Jungian insights, soul-deep topics, and the journey of becoming who you truly are. Remember, your energy is not too much. It's just rare.